Every great town has one or more slum areas where the workers struggle through life as best they can, out of sight of the more fortunate classes of society. This is from an excerpt of The Conditions of the Working Class in England by Friedrich Engels. Engels is describing his visit to Manchester, England, during the industrial boom. He is describing the deplorable social conditions in which the poor lower class had to live and avoid the rich middle class and upper class, because in the Industrial Revolutions, the classes were quite separated. The Industrial Revolution had vast changes both economically and socially. The economic changes were primarily positive and endured longer than the mostly negative aspects of the social changes in industrialized countries. The Industrial Revolution ruined the social conditions of the countries that first adopted it. Before industrialization, people lived in shabby small houses surrounded by land where they dictated their own living conditions. Afterwards, people began to move into apartment-style houses, where the conditions were managed by factory owners who gave them the bare minimum to live. Not only was the housing disgusting, but also the streets in these areas were usually unpaved, full of holes, and strewn with refuse. The working conditions were even worse than the living conditions, with workers being strapped or whipped to stay awake and attentive. The machines that the workers had to manage were unstable and dangerous, sometimes causing injuries like broken thigh bones and eyes being torn out and arms broken. The factory's owners saw what they wanted to, like how always cheerful and alert the children workers were, even though they worked from 5 in the morning until 9 at night. Also, the working class had access to an infinite number of comforts, but none of them could use it because most of them didn't live past the age of 27. While these conditions were horrible, later on, unions were created and other sanctions were put in place, leading to changes that greatly helped the social aspect of the Industrial Revolution. Economically, the Industrial Revolution was quite good for the countries that embraced it early. In the Industrial Revolution, the middle class and the upper class got significantly wealthier and better off. The poor class, not so much. The economy was better because of all the machines, which led to workers being able to do things easier. In 160 years, the iron production by the British alone increased by 500%. The increase in iron allowed the British to export and sell more items, helping their economy. Also, because of the increase in jobs, more children were hired, which meant they got educated at a younger age. Because they were smarter than other children, they could get jobs easier. Also, because owners had more money, they could fix up areas that previously couldn't sustain life, like the little town of Hyde, which the Ashton brothers had enriched and made livable, and so more jobs were open in that area and the country got more money. Finally, the economic prosperity from the Revolution lasted to modern day, while the social changes were quickly fixed. The countries that industrialized first still have some of the most thriving economies today. Places like England and America, which were some of the first countries to industrialize, have economies with some of the biggest GDPs in the world. The social problems that existed in the Industrial Revolution have long since been fixed. All the poor conditions like the refuse in the streets and the poor wages are gone and were replaced with things like minimum wage and laws that are in place to keep living conditions good. The Industrial Revolution was instrumental in the formation in some of the most important countries today. The economic advantages allowed the countries that adapted it first to thrive. Socially, the Industrial Revolution was one of the worst times in England and other countries. The bad has been forgotten now, and people just remember how influential it was on their success today.